Well, it's time to review a movie that absolutely would not exist if it weren't for the fact that Marvel wanted to course correct for the fans by doing a Mandarin Redux. From stock image star to superhero, Simu Liu stars in the new Marvel film Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and it was okay. Let's talk about it. So I'm going to preface this review by saying I'm sorry if I mispronounce anything. I am a stupid English speaker, and we're not known for pronouncing things from other cultures very well.
Ron.
Before watching Shang-Chi, I heard that it had taken a lot of inspiration from old Jackie Chan films, so I decided to watch both police stories before viewing this. And yeah, it definitely paid off, because there were a lot of parallels, especially the bus scene that's shown in every trailer. But there were also just a lot of references to Asian culture in the backgrounds. It wasn't just kung fu movies though, although there were a lot of them. There was also a lot of references to broader Asian pop culture, like there were some references to Pokemon, or possibly some sort of an Asian mythology, but I'm gonna go with Pokemon, because I'm not good at research. But anyways, back to Police Story. I knew there was a lot of inspiration from the practical effects of these Jackie Chan films, and having the Criterion releases of the police stories really helped me appreciate the stunts behind them a lot more, as you really see the thought and time that was put behind making sure each of these stunts kept the actors safe, but was also incredibly thrilling. I mean, everything you see on screen is real. Jackie Chan is breaking ribs and stuff. He really does this. He really does that. But with Shang-Chi, you don't get that feeling. But before I get into the specifics, I want to kind of give a general overview of the film. This is not a film where one element is fantastic, but one element is pretty bad. This isn't even a film where every element is consistently mediocre. Shang-Chi is an odd film, where some of the action is fantastic, and some is kinda lame. Where some of the characters are incredible, and some of the characters are bland. And where some of the parts of the plot are really intriguing, and other parts are really dull and uncreative. The action in this film is fairly consistently the best action out of any of the Marvel films. Note I say Marvel films because Daredevil is incredible. Instead of feeling like the Bourne films and the Taken 3 gate scene had a baby, the action is actually pretty well choreographed, with most of the action being performed by real people instead of just CGI creatures. The bus scene is probably the highlight of the film, but several other sequences offer some really fun set pieces. However, this all changes at the end of the film, where, without spoiling it, it goes from real martial arts to fighting CGI creatures with CGI weapons. Honestly, I really wish this film would have had a smaller budget, as going all out for the third act really killed it for me, in more ways than just the action. The action is overall pretty good, but still none of the scenes are as good as anything from Police Story or Legend of the Drunken Master. But the absolute best part of this film is its villain, the Mandarin. It feels really weird saying that about a Marvel movie. It's really odd seeing someone from a film as good as In the Mood for Love in a Marvel movie, but Tony Leung gives a really great performance and really brings the character to life. His character is what drives the story, with every aspect of it revolving around the Mandarin's past and how it affects his current choices. The Mandarin by far had the most compelling story, and his character arc had me really intrigued. I was excited to see the resolution of this character's emotional journey, and then the third act just pissed all over it. I'm going to take a pause from the characters for a second and rant about the third act. No spoilers. The third act utilizes elements that aren't set up until over halfway through the film, and it is so painfully obvious they only did this so that it ended in some big CGI monster fight.
I hate dust.
Now I know nothing about Shang-Chi's comic book history, but I cannot imagine something as forced in as the thing that sets off the final battle. It's not tied into any character arc, it was barely set up, and it completely tears down any theming or emotional development that this film has set up. I cannot stand how this movie ends. A majority of my problems are with the ending of this film. It really takes what could have been a fun, smaller little Marvel movie into some big Avengers-style thing, and I really am disappointed by it. Anyways, now back to the characters. Simu Liu plays Shang-Chi, and he does pretty good. This is the only thing I've ever seen him in, so it's pretty cool to see not only a relatively unknown actor helm a project as big as this, but for him to nail it. Shang-Chi is a fun, charismatic character who would definitely fit in personality-wise among the other Avengers in whatever crossover film he's inevitably in. How it'll work, I'm not sure, since his power is basically punching people really good, but I'm sure he'll be in something. Shang-Chi, though, is a fairly passive protagonist, as his choices don't really influence the story as much as his dad's, but I feel like his struggle with his father is good enough to make the story work. No MCU movie will ever do the themes of fatherhood and family as good as Guardians of the Galaxy 2, though, so I think it's time for these recent Marvel movies to move on to something else. Awkwafina... I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a huge fan of her. I haven't seen The Farewell yet, to be fair. And I've heard that's her best film, but the way she delivers her lines, especially comedic ones, really just irks me the wrong way. I really wasn't a huge fan of her in Raya and the Last Dragon, and she wasn't as bad in this. I just didn't find her character particularly funny or interesting. She does have a fulfilling character arc, probably the only one in the whole film that isn't undercut by the third act, but I just don't think that she was really necessary, and she could have easily been replaced by another prominent female character. That is a spoiler, but most of you probably know who I'm talking about anyways. While there is a good bit of cringe humor in this, Shang-Chi does feel like it knows how to keep its tone. A lot of other Marvel films will interrupt serious and emotional moments with quips or references, but it seemed like this film shows a lot more restraint in that department. With both Awkwafina's character and another comedic character who pops up later in the film, I was sure this film was going to have some tone problems, but it actually was surprisingly consistent. One huge problem, though, was the lighting. It seemed like at times they were trying to go for a Blade Runner type look, but it was just so dark it was hard to tell what was going on a lot of the time. The conclusion to the final battle had this problem, with it being impossible to tell what was going on. But the worst example was the fight on the side of the building. It was super hard to see what was happening, which sucks because the action is actually pretty good in that scene. Usually when a film makes an action scene too dark to see, it's because the action sucks. But here it's a shame because the action is great. The set design was pretty good, the cinematography was pretty good, even the creature design was pretty good. But there were so many times that these aspects were wasted because I couldn't even see them. One problem I could see some people having is that, compared to recent Marvel stuff, this is really disconnected from the broader MCU. Shang-Chi doesn't really tie into the mainline MCU's current multiverse arc, and it doesn't really set anything up fun to play with in the future. I have no problem with the film being smaller scale, which this wasn't really, but I think they should have stuck to that idea instead of making the third act the way it was. While Shang-Chi is a pretty good movie overall, it definitely has its flaws. I really wish this film could have been smaller budget, as much like its inspirations did, it could have creatively worked within these restraints, creating a greater film overall. This is a film with an identity crisis, not knowing if it wants to be a character-focused kung fu tale or a giant big-budget CGI fest. And that's why I'm giving Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings a 7 out of 10. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe for more movie reviews and content, and I'll see you guys next time.
This is Boomerang from Cartoon Network.